everyone. So now let's talk about our first process of scope management knowledge area, which is our plan scope management. As discussed in the introduction video for the scope management, all the knowledge areas have a plan process. When I talk about the plan process, I'm talking about the plan scope management, the plan schedule management, plan cost management, plan quality management, plan resource management, plan risk management, procurement, stakeholders. So all of these always plan communication, all of these always have a plan process. And whatever the outputs are from these processes, like specifically when we talk about the scope management, I will get the output scope management plan and the requirements management plan. These will actually go back and become an input to your the develop project management plan process in the integration management knowledge area. So this is how the father-child relationship work. Now we are working towards the child, which is our scope management plan and requirements management plan. And last time when we were discussing the integration, we actually talked about the father, which was the project management plan. So they will report to their father. So it's a planning process that generates the scope management plan, and we'll also get the requirements management plan as an output. It's a planning process. It will document how the project scope will be defined, validated and controlled. Again, as I told you earlier, this is all about how you will define, how you will make sure, how you will create the WPS, how you will make sure that if there are any changes to that scope, how you are managing it, how you are controlling it. All of those things are first planned, and how it is planned, it is actually planned in your scope management plan. This process will lay the groundwork for all the future activities. Again, until and unless whatever you need to do it in this knowledge area it is required to be planned. It's required to be made sure that you plan accordingly for it. Like I just didn't go and bought a customized car. I did not do that, right? What I did instead, I actually planned for it. I made sure I did my analysis, I did my research, I used the help of the expert, my friend who actually guided me on the features of that car. I used all of those things to make sure that I get the perfect car, which was my deliverable. Then need, it will provide guidance on how the scope would be managed throughout the project. This is again all about how. The keyword over here is how. It is part of the project or program management plan. So again, it's scope management plan. This will report to the project management plan, and you can consider your program management plan more like something like the grandfather. Think of program management plan as your grandfather. Then we will also discuss about the scope creep. It reduces the risk of project scope creep. So if you have done the planning if you have done planning correctly, if you have done the right things at the right time, then it will prevent the scope creep. And what is scope creep? Scope creep is something an uncontrolled changes. Like for example, let's see your team member reached out to you, and they did a change. They did not reach out, like in order to make sure you are a customer, they did a change, and they thought that it would be a good change, that me as a customer will be very happy about it. But let's say that change resulted into another change, that another change resulted into another third change, so it became more like a blockchain kind of a thing. And ultimately the things became out of hand, and it exceeded the project budget, and it was not a good experience. So again, always try to avoid the gold plating, always try to avoid the scope creep. So if you do the planning properly, this is something which will, this plan document would really help you to avoid scope creep. Okay, so let's see what are the ITTOs of plan scope management process. Again, remember guys, again I repeat this, I've repeated it several times, and the reason why I repeat this several times is I want you guys to know that learning is not the solution. So no need to learn the ITTOs, but please make sure you understand. When I will go through each of these ITTOs with you, make sure that you are understanding. Ask this question to yourself, and again, if you have some questions, if you have some doubts, you know where to go. Go to my blog section, write a comment on the website. Make sure that or send me an email. I repeat, send me a direct email, and I'll make sure I'll try to reply you within 24 hours for sure. And I repeat, my email address is varun.anand@eduhubspot.com. That's my direct email address. But if you want to send it to the support group, that's also, this may take some time. If you want to reach out to me directly, I want to make sure you get a personalized experience. So send me an email to my email address. It's Varun, VARUN, my first name, .ANAND@eduhubspot.com. Understand, build the concepts. That's the trick for the success of PMP. Okay, let's see. So we will have project charter as the input to the process. Project charter, if you remember, project charter was all about the high level scope. What are the things which are at a very high level. But in order to plan for the scope in more details, you will always start with the base, and the base was your project charter. Then if we talk about the project management plan, we will have the project lifecycle description, quality management plan, and the development approach. We'll be discussing this on the next slide. We will have our common inputs, which is the EFOPA. Tools and outputs, let's discuss on the following slides as well. Okay, so inputs, again, as I told you, the child always comes from the father. Okay, so father is the origin, right? So your project management plan is the origin, and the child, which is the scope management plan and the requirement management plan, which will become part of this particular process, would be the output. So first you will have the project management plan, as an input, PMP. Then you will have the project life cycle description, development approach, and quality management plan. So project life cycle description. This determines the number of phases the project will include from birth till the end. And I'll give you a real life example for this. So first of all, I divided this organization's project into 3 phases. For me, my first phase was about the website. I wanted to make sure that my students get a real life simulator kind of experience when they go to eduhubspot.com. So for me, my phase 1 was the website. Then this is the time of mobile, right? Everybody wants to make sure that they have these questions, videos on their mobile. I'm pretty sure some of you might be traveling at this time, going to work or coming back from work, or sitting in the lunchtime and watching this video. So on your phone sets, right? So for me, my phase 2 was the mobile. So, and then when I started this, I started with the first Android app. I started with Android, and then I went for the Apple app. So for me, these were the 3 phases. But when I have to plan for the scope, because each 3 of these divisions, the website, the Android, as well as the Apple, has similar scope, but little bit different because of the implementation strategy. So the project lifecycle description is all about how many phases it will have. And then, the phase 4 was actually the maintenance phase, which we have been doing from years now. Then the next we have the development approach. This determines what approach will be used. For instance, waterfall, iterative, adaptive, agile, or a hybrid approach. So approach is very important. PMI has never said it. They don't say that okay, agile is better, or waterfall is better. No, they have not published anything like that. It all depends upon your organization structure, how it is working, and how things are done. I'm a big advocate for agile. I want to make sure things are done quickly. I could see the product sooner. So that's, and lot of people want to do the same thing. But when I started this project, for me it was actually a waterfall model, because I wanted to measure the success of all of these 3 things first, and then move to the next one. So like for example, for me, my website was the phase one. So I did not do Android or Apple in parallel. I first started with the website and then I moved to the Android, and then I saw that, a lot of people are asking about the Apple app. So then I moved to the Apple. So for me, it took more time, and whatever things we learned, whatever issues we had in the beginning was actually rectified in the upgraded versions of the app. So this is how you develop, right? For me, it waterfall proved to be more beneficial, but I'm not advocating waterfall over agile or agile over waterfall. It all depends upon what your project type is, how your organization works. It's totally dependent upon you. And then we also have the quality management plan. So we'll be discussing quality management plan in much more detail. But the reason why quality management plan is here as an input is basically quality is tightly linked to the scope. Like quality is all about meeting the project requirements. So if I have to plan for quality, this means I want to make sure that I'm meeting my requirements. I'm making sure I'm doing the right thing. So quality management plan is also an input to this process. Then project charter, as explained earlier, project charter, we need to know the high level description. I want to start from the base, and for me the base document is the project charter. Then EEF and OPA we have already discussed. These are the common inputs. EF, it's all something which is not in control of the project team, something which could be internal or something external to the organization. If you remember the example which I gave you in the integration, which was about two organizations I worked. One culture was come anytime, just get the work done. The other culture was that you have to be there by 9, because that was a client side requirement. So again, I loved working for both, but that was an example of EEF. For me, not for me, OPA is more like the processes which you follow, the procedures which you follow, which are very specific to that organization, like the PMIS, the work authorization system, the I would say all of the lessons learned. All of those are actually part of your OPA, organization process assets. Okay, so tools and techniques, we have the common tools and techniques. First, we will have the expert judgment. Just remember, expert judgment. Now, what I'm doing, I'm planning for the scope. What I did, I went to my friend, I asked him that, okay, can you help me to define to plan for the scope? What all things should be really matters the most to me? So he actually told me that, Varun, I'm not the one who will guide you. You are the one who will guide yourself. So you tell me what are the most important things. So I said, most important is that I want to make sure it's safety. Safety was one of the most important. Then I need speed. Then I thought the interiors should be pretty good for the car. Then like it has the back view camera. When I'm reversing the car, it has all the security features, theft control, and all of those things. Something which I told him that this is what I asked him. But he was the one who guided me. Okay, if you want a backdoor mirror camera, do you want a camera on your side as well? Because if you're changing lanes, what will you do? So he was the one who was actually giving his expert judgment in order to help me to buy that car. Then everything is always associated with the data. So that's our next tool, which is our data analysis. One of the data analysis, an example of data analysis is the alternative analysis, the process to identify alternatives for collecting the requirements, explaining the project product scope in detail, developing and validating. So again, you always and always need some alternatives. Like nobody's perfect. We always have a lot of alternative options. Like for you, just take an example. You had an option to go to provider A for this PMP trainer. You have the option to go to provider B. Like it's again, you probably selected me because you watched one of the videos, you pretty liked it, and that's where you went for the complete package. So what you did, you actually also did the data analysis on your side. You had the alternative options. You defined the pros and cons of all those options, and you selected the best one, which was as per you. Like if you remember, For you, good might not mean good for others. For you, bad might not mean bad for others. So again, it's open to different interpretation. For my interpretation could be different, and your interpretation could be different. And it all boils down to alternatives analysis. We should always discuss the alternatives, and based upon that, you should analyze and take a decision and plan for the scope accordingly. Then everything, whatever you do, we always have a meeting. We make sure we do the right thing. If you remember, the example which I gave you for meetings was the study groups which came out from my Facebook and LinkedIn groups. So a lot of people, they talk, they say that, okay, I'm from Eastern time zone, I'm from West Coast, do you guys want to plan for a study group, do you guys want to meet? I'm from the New York region, let's meet in the New York somewhere in Subway, and or probably in Starbucks. So this is how you plan for it, right? So again, whatever you're doing, you're probably doing the brainstorming session. In your meeting, you're discussing about what are the things which you should do and all those things. So that's an example of the meeting section. Okay, so next we have the outputs, and we will have two outputs in this, the scope management plan and the requirements management plan. So let's see the first scope management plan. It's a document which will define how the project scope will be defined, developed, monitored, controlled, and validated. So when I talk about scope management plan, it's all about scope. And scope is much more than it's much more than the requirements. It's not specifically just the requirements, it's also about work breakdown structure. It's also about it's also about how you will get the acceptance on that scope, how your customer will follow the process, how you will manage any changes to that scope. So that is at a very at a scope level. Requirements is just one piece of that scope. So that's why, but since requirements is one of the most important for your project, so you want to make sure that you have specific planning for your requirements as well. So let's see, scope management plan, we have process that will help to create the project scope statement. So something which will make sure that you define the scope, something which will help you to describe that scope in much more detail, describe those requirements in much more details. Okay, that is that all those things would be part of your scope statement. Then process that will help to create the work breakdown structure. So your WBS would be framed here, would be developed here, how you will do it, right? So all those things, what are the tools you will use to develop those? So all of those things are actually first planned, how you will do it, and how is actually part of your scope management plan. Then process on how to get the approval and maintain the scope baseline, how you will maintain the scope baseline, if there are any changes to that scope baseline, how you will do it, will you follow the a change control process or not? So once your baseline is established, you will always follow the change control process, but prior to that, it's not necessary to follow the change control process, whatever you have defined. Then how you will get the formal acceptance on the deliverables, make sure that your customer is doing the right thing, they are checking the latest updated document, requirements document, which was finally approved. So you want to make sure there are no variances, what was asked and you delivered accordingly. Then on the right side, we have the requirements management plan. So first we discuss the scope management plan, and then we discuss the requirement management plan. This is the document which will define how the project product requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. So scope management plan was all about scope. Requirements management plan, as the name suggests, is all about requirements, how you will analyze the requirements, how you will document the requirements, how you will manage those requirements. Okay, so let's see how requirements will be collected, planned, tracked, and reported. How you will track those requirements. You will also have the requirements traceability matrix when we do the next process, collect requirements. But how you will track it, how you will link it to the source, to the origin, how you will do a comparison of whether it is meeting your business objectives, your project objective, is it meeting the strategic goals? So, all those, how you will specifically remember, it is all about how you will maintain your requirements. How the configuration activities will be taken care, it also includes how changes will be initiated. Okay, but changes related to the requirements only. Okay. So how the configuration activities? Configuration activities, a lot of people get confused. Just make sure you don't forget to watch the video on perform integrated change control process on in the integration management. I have clearly described between the configuration management as well as the change management. So configuration management, it's all about the configuration, the specifications. Change management is all about, like, how you will get the approval for those changes, how you will reject it, how you will do the impact analysis. But whenever you're talking about the features, first you identify that item which needs to be changed, then you actually track it, then you communicate it, then you audit it. All those are actually part of your configuration management. So do watch out that video, very important, approximately 20 questions from the perform integrated change control process. Then how you will prioritize those requirements, which requirement is more important, which requirement is less important, that is also would be taken care. Then what matrix to use and why to use such matrix, how did you define that matrix, that's also very important on the requirement section. And finally, how to define the traceability structure of your RTM. RTM is the requirements traceability matrix. How you came up with this structure. All of those things would be part of your requirements management plan. Okay, so this marks the completion of your plan process. Next process, we have the collect requirements, where we would be discussing in much more details about your requirements, what are the different tools and techniques you would do. So stay tuned for that. Thank you.